A homeless girl was pushing a shopping cart with twin babies through the snow. When the billionaire opened the door of his hotel, he came face to face with a secret that broke his heart. The howling wind cut through the night silence, carrying snowflakes that danced under the pale glow of the streetlights. In the midst of this relentless winter scene, a small solitary figure moved with determination. Emily, a girl of only 5 years old, was pushing a rusty shopping cart, her tiny fingers gripping the cold metal bars firmly. Inside the cart, wrapped in thin, worn blankets, lay her 6-month-old twin siblings. Their little faces, reddened by the cold, peeked through the layers of fabric, wide eyes fixed on their older sister, who was struggling against the storm. Emily stopped for a moment, panting, her breath forming small clouds in the icy air. She looked at the babies, her heart tightening at the sight of their trembling lips. Carefully, she adjusted the blankets, trying to shield them from the relentless wind. "It's going to be okay," she whispered, her voice nearly swallowed by the storm. "We'll find a warm place. I promise." A sudden flashback invaded her mind. The precarious shelter where they had spent the last few nights. The leaking roof, the thin walls that barely kept out the cold, the hard floor where they slept huddled together. Emily shook her head, pushing the memory away. They couldn't go back there, not with winter growing harsher every day. Summoning her last reserves of strength, Emily kept pushing the cart. Each step was a battle against the wind and the accumulating snow, which already reached her knees. Her boots, far too big and full of holes, barely protected her feet from the biting cold. The twins began to whimper, their soft cries muffled by both the blankets and the wind's howl. Emily felt warm tears rolling down her chilled cheeks. She had to find shelter. She had to protect her little siblings. The snow was falling harder now, reducing visibility to just a few feet. Emily struggled to keep her eyes open, blinking rapidly to clear away the flakes building up on her lashes. The cart felt heavier with every step, and her arms trembled with the effort. Then she saw it. Upon turning a corner, the golden lights of a huge building shone through the curtain of snow. A hotel, grand, luxurious, and most importantly, warm. With renewed hope, Emily steered the cart toward the hotel's back entrance. Her heart pounded in her chest, a mix of exhaustion and desperate optimism. As she drew closer, the contrast between the frozen world around her and the heat emanating from the building was almost painful. Emily stopped in front of a service door, hesitating. She knew that people like her, dirty, poor, homeless, weren't welcome in places like this. But the twins' cries were getting louder, and she could feel the cold seeping into her bones. With a courage born of despair, Emily raised her trembling hand and knocked on the door. The sound seemed to echo in the silent night, muffled by the falling snow. While she waited, praying someone would answer, Emily looked at her siblings. Their tiny eyes were closed now, cheeks flushed pink from the cold. She knew they couldn't survive another minute in this deadly freeze. "Please," she whispered, knocking again, more forcefully this time. "Please, someone help us." The ensuing silence was deafening. Emily knocked once more, her small hands now pounding on the door with all the strength she could muster. "Help, please," she cried, her rough, desperate voice disappearing into the storm. Tears froze on her cheeks as she kept knocking, the sound of her fists on the door blending with the baby's sobs and the wind's howl. Emily glanced around, panic beginning to take hold. The snow fell more heavily with every passing second, the cold slicing through her thin clothes. She didn't know how much longer the twins could last. With one final look at the silent door, Emily made a decision. She couldn't stand there waiting for help that might never come. Gathering what was left of her strength, she started pushing the cart again, moving around the building. There had to be another entrance, another chance. Emily refused to give up. With each painful step through the deep snow, she repeated the same words to herself and to the babies. "We can do it. We'll be okay. I promise." The storm roared around her, but Emily kept going, a small figure of determination against the fury of winter, carrying the precious burden of her hopes and the uncertain future ahead. Robert Johnson straightened his silk tie, an automatic gesture after years of tense meetings. At 60, the billionaire owner of the Lux hotel chain still ran his company with an iron fist, but tonight had been particularly exhausting. Heated discussions about expansions and budget cuts had dragged on for hours, leaving him drained and irritable. Deciding to avoid the main lobby and the inevitable pleasantries, Robert opted to leave through the hotel's back exit. He needed a breath of fresh air and a moment of solitude before returning to his empty penthouse. As he opened the service door, he was greeted by a blast of icy wind and snow. Muttering under his breath, he raised the collar of his suede coat, ready to brave the storm until he reached his car. Then he heard it, a faint sound, almost swallowed by the wind's howl, a cry. Robert paused, frowning. His eyes, accustomed to the hotel's dim corridors, scanned the darkness. And there, partly hidden by the shadows, he saw a small figure pushing something. "Who's there?" he called out, his deep voice cutting through the cold air. The figure stopped, and for a moment, Robert thought they would flee. But then, slowly, the figure turned toward him. Robert felt the air leave his lungs. A little girl, no older than 5, stood before him. Her dirty, pale face was framed by tangled hair, and her eyes were large and frightened, yet shone with a determination that took him by surprise. "Please, sir," the girl's voice was barely above a whisper, "can you help us?" Robert stepped forward, noticing for the first time what the girl was pushing, a rusty shopping cart, and inside. "My God," he murmured, seeing the 2 babies wrapped in thin blankets. "They're cold," the girl said, her voice trembling. "I tried to keep them warm, but—" Robert acted on instinct. In seconds, he was beside the cart, feeling the chill emanating from the children. "Come with me," he said, his tone making it clear it wasn't a request. "Now." The girl hesitated for a moment, but one of the babies started to cry, as if deciding for her. Robert scooped both babies into his arms, feeling how cold they were even through his clothes. "Grab the cart," he instructed the girl. "We're going inside." As he guided them inside, Robert's heart pounded. What was he doing? This was madness. He should call the authorities, let them handle it. But something in this girl's eyes, in the way she protected the babies. Once they were in the warm back corridor of the hotel, Robert could finally see the children clearly. And that was when he felt a strange unease. There was something familiar about the baby's features, the shape of the older girl's nose. He couldn't place it, but the feeling unnerved him. "Mr. Johnson?" The surprised voice of one of the employees pulled him back to reality. "Is everything all right?" "Yes, James," Robert responded, his tone brooking no argument. "Get the presidential suite ready." "Now?" The employee stared, confused by the children, but years of working for Robert had taught him not to question orders. "Yes, sir." Right away. Riding the private elevator, Robert watched the girl. She was clearly exhausted, yet her gaze never left the babies. "What's your name?" he asked gently. "Emily," she answered, watching him warily. "And they're Max and Sophie," Robert nodded, the unease growing. Those names, why did they sound so familiar? The elevator doors opened directly into the presidential suite. Emily stared in awe at the luxury around her. "James," Robert called to the employee who had followed them, "bring clean clothes for the children and have the kitchen prepare something warm for them. Soup, maybe." As James hurried off to follow orders, Robert led Emily into the main bathroom. "Let's give them a warm bath," he said, starting to fill the enormous tub. Emily watched Robert's every move, still wary but visibly relieved to be in the warmth. "Your mother," Robert began hesitantly. "Where is she?" Emily's face fell, a shadow passing over her eyes. "She's gone," was all she said. Robert decided not to press further. There would be time for questions later. Right now, the important thing was to care for these children. Carefully, they bathed the twins, who perked up at the warmth of the water. Emily, though exhausted, insisted on helping, her small fingers gentle as she washed her siblings. When James returned with clothes and food, Robert found himself in a surreal situation. There he was, one of the most powerful men in the country, feeding babies and helping a 5-year-old girl get dressed. As the children ate their warm soup, Robert couldn't stop watching them. The unease from before only grew, something about Emily's gestures, the way the babies smiled. "Emily," he said softly, "can you tell me what happened? How did you end up on the street?" The girl put down her spoon, tears pooling in her eyes. "Mommy said we had to run away, that it was dangerous to stay, but then there was an accident." She swallowed hard. She didn't wake up. "I tried to wake her, but..." Robert felt his chest tighten. "What about your father?" Emily visibly shuddered. He's a bad man. Mommy said never to let him find us." Emily's words echoed in Robert's mind, stirring memories he had long tried to bury, memories of his own daughter, who had vanished years ago after a terrible argument. Shaking his head to clear those thoughts, Robert refocused on the present. These children needed help, regardless of who they were. "You're safe now," he said, his voice kinder than it had been in years. "I'll take care of you tonight, and tomorrow we'll figure out what to do." Emily looked at him, a mix of hope and fear in her eyes. "Can we stay?" Robert nodded, feeling an emotion he couldn't name. "Yes, dear. You can stay. For now." Once the children finally fell asleep, exhausted but safe, Robert kept watch. Looking at those small, sleeping figures, he couldn't shake the feeling there was more to this story, something that tied him to these children in a way he still didn't understand. With a sigh, he settled into a nearby armchair. Tomorrow, he promised himself, he would start investigating. He would find out the truth about these children and why they seemed so strangely familiar to him. For now, all he could do was watch over their sleep and brace himself for whatever fate had in store for them all. The sun had barely risen when Robert Johnson woke up, his neck stiff from a night spent in the armchair. For a moment, he was disoriented, until his eyes landed on the 3 small figures asleep in the king-size bed of the presidential suite. The events of the previous night hit him like a wave. Standing silently, Robert approached the bed. Emily slept on her side, one protective arm around the twins. Her face, now clean, looked even younger and more vulnerable in the morning light. Robert felt a pang in his chest, a mix of compassion and an unexplainable sense of familiarity. Picking up his phone, he stepped out onto the suite's balcony. The cold morning air helped clear his thoughts as he dialed a familiar number. "Frank, it's Robert. I need your services." "It's a delicate matter, and urgent." Frank had been his trusted private investigator for years, discreet and efficient. Robert offered a brief explanation of the situation, omitting his personal suspicions. "I want everything you can find on these children and their mother. Top priority, Frank. And total discretion." Ending the call, Robert went back inside only to find Emily awake, watching him with a mixture of curiosity and apprehension. "Good morning, Emily," he said softly. "Did you sleep well?" The girl nodded slowly. "The babies, they didn't cry all night." "That never happens," Robert smiled. "Well, I guess they liked the comfy bed. How about some breakfast?" While they waited for room service, Robert tried to talk to Emily, hoping to learn more about her story. "Emily, can you tell me a bit more about your mom? What was she like?" The girl was silent for a moment, fiddling with the hem of her new nightgown. "She was beautiful," Emily finally said, her voice barely above a whisper. "And she sang to us every night, but sometimes she cried when she thought I was asleep." Robert felt his heart tighten. "And you lived in a house before the accident?" Emily shook her head. "No, we moved around a lot. Mommy said it was an adventure, but I knew she was scared." Before Robert could ask more, the twins began to whimper, roused from their deep sleep. Emily jumped up to tend to them, her manner switching from a vulnerable child to a little caregiver in an instant. Watching Emily take care of her siblings, Robert couldn't help but notice certain mannerisms, the way she tilted her head or furrowed her brow in concentration, gestures that stirred distant memories in his mind. Breakfast arrived, and Robert observed with a mixture of admiration and concern as Emily skillfully fed the twins before eating her own meal. It was clear the girl had taken on responsibilities far beyond her years. "Emily," Robert began carefully, "you've done a wonderful job looking after your brothers, but I want you to know that now you can just be a kid. I'll help take care of all of you." Emily looked at him with a mixture of relief and distrust. "How long can we stay?" The question caught Robert off guard. He hadn't thought about the long term yet, but the idea of sending the children away caused an inexplicable sense of dread. "For now, you can stay as long as you need," he said, trying to sound reassuring. "Don't worry about that now, okay?" The day passed in a blur of feeding bottles, diapers, and attempts to make Emily feel more at ease. Robert cancelled all his appointments, delegating tasks to his executives for the first time in years. His attention was fully on the children and the mystery surrounding them. In the afternoon, while the twins took a nap, Robert found Emily sitting on the balcony, gazing pensively at the city below. "What are you thinking about?" he asked gently, sitting down beside her. Emily took a moment to answer. "Mommy liked high places. She said you could see the future from up there." Robert felt a pang in his chest. "Your mother sounds like a very special person." Emily nodded, tears welling in her eyes. "I miss her." Without thinking, Robert put an arm around Emily's shoulders. To his surprise, she didn't pull away. On the contrary, she leaned into him, as though finally letting herself be comforted. In that moment, Robert made a decision. Regardless of what his investigation revealed, he would protect these children. If they truly were his grandchildren, as his heart increasingly believed, he would do everything possible to make up for the lost years. That night, after the children had finally fallen asleep, Robert received a message from Frank. "Initial info coming in. It's complicated. We need to talk in person." Robert felt a chill run down his spine. What had Frank discovered? He had barely begun processing the message when a high-pitched scream tore through the sweet silence. Rushing to the bedroom, Robert found Emily thrashing around in the bed, caught in a terrible nightmare. "Emily, Emily, wake up!" he called, gently shaking the girl. Emily's eyes flew open, filled with terror. "The car, the noise, Mommy!" Robert pulled her into a hug, feeling her small body tremble against him. "Shh, it's all right. It was just a bad dream. You're safe now." Gradually, Emily calmed down, her breathing returning to normal. Robert continued to hold her, murmuring soothing words. "Want to tell me about the dream?" he asked gently once Emily finally pulled back. The girl hesitated, but then the words poured out in an anguished torrent. "We were in the car. Mommy was driving fast. She seemed scared. Then there was a loud noise and the car spun. I saw Mommy, she wasn't moving." Robert felt his heart break. It was clear Emily had witnessed the accident that claimed her mother's life. The guilt he felt for not being there for his daughter, for these children, threatened to overwhelm him. "Emily," he said, gently holding her shoulders, "what happened wasn't your fault. Your mother loved you and your brothers more than anything. She wanted you all to be safe." Emily looked at him, her large eyes brimming with tears. "Do you think she'd be proud of me? For taking care of the babies?" "I'm sure of it," Robert replied, a lump in his throat. "You're an amazing girl, Emily. Your mother would be so proud." That night, Robert stayed awake long after Emily drifted back to sleep. His mind teemed with unanswered questions and a growing sense of responsibility toward these children. The next morning, while the kids were still sleeping, Robert met Frank in his private office at the hotel. "What did you find out?" Robert asked, barely containing his anxiety. Frank looked uneasy. "Robert, what I found? It's complicated. The children don't officially exist. There's no record of birth, no documentation at all." Robert frowned. "How is that possible? It's as though someone wanted to keep them hidden," Frank continued. "But there's more. I found a photo." He hesitated before handing Robert an envelope. With trembling hands, Robert opened the envelope. Inside was a faded picture of a young woman holding a baby. His heart nearly stopped. It was Sarah, his daughter. Where did you get this?" Robert asked, his voice rough. It was hidden in the lining of the cart the girl was pushing, Frank explained. Robert, do you think... Robert couldn't take his eyes off the photo. The resemblance between the woman in the picture and Emily was undeniable. And the baby, could it be her? I need more, Frank, Robert finally said, looking up. Find out everything you can about Sarah's last few years, where she was, who she was with. When Frank left, Robert was alone with his thoughts and the photo of Sarah. Memories he had buried years ago began to resurface. The last fight with his daughter, the harsh words, the slamming door. A sound from the suite pulled him back to the present. The children were waking up. Entering the bedroom, Robert saw Emily sitting up, cradling one of the twins. The morning light illuminated her profile, and for a moment, Robert saw Sarah in her so clearly that it nearly took his breath away. Good morning, he said softly, approaching. How are you all today? Emily looked at him, a small smile on her lips. Better. Sophie likes it when I sing to her. Mommy always sang. Robert sat on the edge of the bed. Your mother sounds like she was a very special person. Emily nodded, tears once again filling her eyes. I miss her. At that moment, Robert made a resolve. Regardless of what his investigation uncovered, he would protect these children. If they were truly his grandchildren, as he increasingly believed, he would do everything possible to make up for the years lost with Sarah. Emily, he said gently, I know you've been through a lot, but I want you to know that while you're here, you'll be safe. I'll look after all of you. The girl looked at him, her eyes so like Sarah's, filled with a mix of hope and caution. Promise. Robert felt a knot in his throat. I promise. The following days flew by in a blur of activities. Robert divided his time between caring for the children and working with Frank to unravel the mystery of their past. Every new bit of information, every familiar gesture from the kids, only strengthened his suspicion that they were indeed the family he thought he had lost forever. Little by little, Emily began to open up, sharing small details about her life with her mother. She talked about constantly moving from place to place, about the nights her mother held her tight and said everything would be okay. Robert listened to every word, his heart heavy with guilt for all that his daughter must have gone through. The twins, meanwhile, blossomed under the care of Robert and the hotel staff. Their smiles and laughter filled the suite with a joy Robert hadn't felt in years. He often found himself lost in thought, imagining how different things might have been if he had been there from the start, if he had supported Sarah instead of pushing her away. One afternoon, while playing with the twins on the living room carpet, Robert noticed Emily watching him intently. What is it, dear? He asked. Emily hesitated for a moment before speaking. You remind me of someone. In the photos Mommy used to keep. Robert's heart raced. What photos? Old ones. She'd look at them sometimes and get sad. There was a man in them. Emily frowned, trying to remember. She called him Dad. Robert felt as if all the air had been sucked out of the room. He leaned closer to Emily, struggling to keep his voice calm. Emily, your mom. What was her name? The girl looked at him, confused by the intensity of his question. Sarah. Her name was Sarah. In that instant, all of Robert's suspicions crystallized into a painful, wonderful certainty. These children, these little souls that fate had placed in his path, were his grandchildren. The daughter he had lost, who he had failed in so many ways, had given him a second chance. With tears in his eyes, Robert embraced Emily, feeling her tense little body gradually relax against him. It's all right now, he whispered, more to himself than to her. You're home. That night, after the children had fallen asleep, Robert remained awake, his mind a whirlwind of emotions and thoughts. He picked up his phone and called Frank. Frank, I need you to speed up the investigation and add one more thing. Look for any information about the children's father. There was a pause on the other end of the line. Robert, are you sure? This could open a can of worms. Robert sighed. I know, but I need to know everything. These children, they're my family, Frank. I have to protect them. After hanging up, Robert returned to the children's bedroom. He stood there watching them sleep, their small chests rising and falling with each peaceful breath. Emily had mentioned her mother was running from someone dangerous. Was it the children's father? What had Sarah been facing all those years? Guilt consumed him. If only he hadn't been so proud, so unyielding. If he had looked for Sarah, tried to reconcile, maybe she would still be alive. Maybe these children would never have known the fear and hunger of the streets. But now was not the time for self-pity. Now he had a chance to make things right, to be the grandfather these children deserved, the father Sarah had always needed. The top-floor office of the Lux Hotel was silent, except for the soft ticking of the wall clock and Robert Johnson's heavy breathing. The billionaire sat motionless in his leather chair, phone trembling slightly in his hand as he contemplated the call he needed to make. The golden light of dusk spilled through the panoramic windows, bathing the room in amber hues that seemed to stir long-buried memories in his heart. On the mahogany desk before him lay an old photograph that caught his eye. Sarah, at 16, beaming in her graduation dress, eyes shining with promises of the future. Beside it, a more recent photo Frank had found, Sarah pregnant, her face more mature but still wearing that same smile so reminiscent of her late mother. Robert closed his eyes, and the memories washed over him like an inexorable tide. It was an autumn afternoon, much like this one. Golden leaves danced outside his office window, while Sarah stood before him, one hand protectively over her 5-month belly. Her usually gentle face was tense with a determination he had never seen before. "You don't understand, Dad." Sarah's voice echoed in his memory, laden with a mixture of hurt and resolve. "For the first time in my life, I'm making my own decisions. Why is that so hard for you to accept?" Robert found himself right back in that moment, frustration and fear turning into words as sharp as blades. "You're throwing your life away, Sarah. Everything I've built, everything I planned for you. For what? To get involved with someone you barely know." "That's the problem," Sarah exploded, tears glistening in her green eyes. "How your plans do it, your expectations, your need to control every aspect of my life. What about my dreams, Dad? Have you ever asked what I want?" "What you want is to plunge headfirst into a relationship that will destroy your future." He slammed his hand on the desk, rattling the photo frames. "Don't you see you're being manipulated? That you're risking not only your life, but this child's too?" Sarah recoiled as if slapped, her hands instinctively protecting her belly. "You haven't even tried to meet him, Dad. You know nothing about our life, our plans. You're so blinded by your own prejudice, you don't see that I'm happy for the first time in years." "Happy?" Robert let out a bitter laugh. "Sarah, you dropped out of law school in your last year. You cut off all your friends. You moved to a tiny apartment in a rundown part of town. Is that what you call happiness?" "I call it freedom," Sarah retorted, her voice shaking with emotion. "Freedom to find out who I am without having to carry the weight of the Johnson name. Without having to live under the shadow of your impossible expectations." Robert felt the blood boil in his veins. "Impossible expectations. I just wanted the best for you, Sarah. I wanted to protect you, to give you every opportunity that you never had," Sarah interrupted, eyes flashing. "Have you ever thought that maybe I don't want to be the perfect heiress to the Johnson empire? That maybe I want to build my own life, make my own mistakes?" "Mistakes?" Robert stood, his voice thundering. "Is that how you see your future? As a string of mistakes you'll make just to prove you can, and this child? Have you thought about what will happen when reality hits you?" Sarah squared her shoulders, a strange calm replacing her earlier agitation. "Yes, Dad. I've thought about it a lot. And you know what? I'm going to love this baby unconditionally. I'll support their dreams, even if they're different from mine. I'll let them be whoever they want to be, without trying to mold them into my idea of perfect." Her words struck Robert like a punch to the gut, but his wounded pride prevailed. "If that's how you see things, Sarah, then maybe it's better if you go, and don't bother coming back when everything falls apart. I won't be here to fix your mistakes." The silence that followed was deafening. Sarah stared at him for a long moment, and Robert saw something die in her eyes, her last spark of hope that her father might understand her, accept her. "Goodbye, Dad," she whispered, and the door closed softly behind her, the sound echoing like a final sentence in his heart. The shrill ring of the phone tore him out of his memories. It was Frank. "Mr. Johnson," the investigator's voice was tense. "I found something. You need to see this in person." 20 minutes later, Frank stepped into his office carrying a thick folder and a grave expression on his normally impassive face. Robert noticed that the investigator's hands, usually so steady, trembled slightly as he placed the documents on the desk. "They're the hospital records of the twins," he began, opening the folder. "They were born at St. Mary's Hospital in Portland exactly 2 years ago. But there's something very strange. They were registered under the name Claire Bennett." Robert frowned. "A fake name." "Yes, and it wasn't the only one," Frank went on, spreading more documents across the desk. "I found records of Sarah using at least 3 different identities in recent years. Claire Bennett, Anna Thompson, Maria Stevens. She was clearly trying not to be found. And she did an impressive job. The identities were very well constructed, with credit histories, employment references, everything." "That must have cost a fortune," Robert muttered, examining the documents. "Where did the money come from?" Frank shifted uncomfortably in his chair. "That's another interesting part. Sarah had a secret account, opened years before she left home. She'd been making small deposits regularly, building up an emergency fund. By the time she left, she had almost $500,000 saved." Robert felt as though the air had been sucked out of the room. Sarah had planned her escape for years, meticulously preparing for a day he never imagined would come. "And before the twins?" he asked, dreading the answer. Frank's hesitation was evident. "There are disturbing medical records. 3 ER visits in 6 months, broken ribs, extensive bruises, a serious concussion. Each time she gave a different explanation. Domestic accidents, falls, even a supposed horseback riding accident." Robert closed his eyes, fighting the nausea threatening to rise in his throat. His daughter, his little Sarah, had suffered repeated abuse while he was entrenched in wounded pride, convinced she'd learn her lesson and come home. "I managed to locate someone who can shed more light on what happened," Frank continued in a softer voice. "Jennifer Walsh, a nurse who took care of Sarah when the twins were born. She agreed to speak with you." 2 hours later, Robert sat in a discreet coffee shop on the outskirts of the city, across from a middle-aged woman with kind eyes and an expression weighed down by many secrets. "Sarah arrived at the hospital in premature labor," Jennifer began, her hands gripping a coffee cup as though for strength. "She was soaked from the rain, shivering with cold and fear. The twins were in fetal distress and we had to do an emergency C-section." "How was she?" Robert asked, his voice barely a whisper. Jennifer looked at him with a mix of compassion and reproach. Terrified, she kept glancing over her shoulder, insisting we register the babies under a false name. She begged for extra security at her room door. "Why didn't she ever come to me?" The question slipped from Robert's lips before he could stop it. "She tried," Jennifer responded gently. "Once, a few months before the twins were born. She went to your office, but security wouldn't let her up. Apparently on your orders." The weight of guilt threatened to crush him. That stupid order, given in a moment of fury and wounded pride, had closed the last door for his daughter when she needed him most. "After the twins were born," Jennifer continued, "Sarah became even more cautious. She kept moving from place to place, always checking if she was being followed. She dyed her hair, wore colored contact lenses. Anything not to be recognized. Did she ever mention me?" Jennifer hesitated. "Sometimes, mostly when she had a high fever after the C-section. She called out for you in her delirium, asked for forgiveness. Said she wanted you to meet your grandkids, but it was too dangerous." Back at the hotel, Robert found Emily on the suite's balcony, hugging her knees as she watched the sunset. The golden light illuminated her profile, and for a painful moment, she was the spitting image of Sarah at that age. "May I sit with you?" he asked softly. Emily nodded, shifting slightly to make room. Robert noticed she was holding something, a small, colorful ribbon that seemed to have been part of a dress. "Was it your mother's?" he asked. Emily stroked the ribbon with her fingers. "Yes. It was from her blue dress, her favorite. She gave it to me before the accident. She said it would bring me luck." Robert took a deep breath. "Can you tell me more about the last days you spent with her?" Emily was silent for a long moment, still fiddling with the ribbon. "She cried a lot at night," she finally said, her voice small, "when she thought I was asleep, and she was always checking the windows and doors over and over. She had a special box where she kept important papers, and she made me memorize a phone number for emergencies. You moved around a lot." "All the time," Emily sighed. "Mom said we were like explorers on a grand adventure, but I knew she was scared. Sometimes, when she thought she saw someone following us, she turned so pale, like she'd seen a ghost." "And the last time?" Robert asked gently. "Before the accident." Emily wrapped her arms more tightly around her knees. "It was different. Mom was more scared than usual. She woke me up in the middle of the night, saying we had to leave right away. We only took a few clothes and her special box. She drove for a long time, really fast." Her voice failed her, and Robert wrapped her in his arms again, feeling her small frame tremble with barely contained sobs. "It's all right," he murmured. "You're safe now. All of you." Later that night, after putting the kids to bed, Robert returned to his office. That day's discoveries weighed on his mind like lead. Sarah's constant fear, her desperate attempts to protect her children, the dark mystery chasing her. It all formed a disturbing puzzle. Picking up his phone, he dialed Frank's number. "I want you to dig deeper," he instructed, his voice resolute. "Bank records, financial transactions, anything that might tell us what or who Sarah was running from. Also check that emergency phone number she gave Emily. And Frank, spare no resources. We need to find the truth." Staring at the city lights through the window, Robert made a silent promise to Sarah. He had failed to protect her, but he would not fail her children. This time he would face whatever shadows lurked, whatever the cost. In the room next door, Emily finally drifted off to sleep, still clutching the blue ribbon in her small hand, while the twins breathed softly in their cribs. Through the slightly open door, Robert watched them for a moment, his heart heavy with responsibility and guilt. The puzzle pieces were beginning to fit together, forming an increasingly dark picture. Sarah had spent her last years in a constant nightmare, always running, always looking over her shoulder. Now it was Robert's turn to discover the truth behind her desperate flight and ensure her grandchildren would never have to live in fear again. Tomorrow, he would begin digging through the past with even greater determination. So many questions remained unanswered, so much mystery shrouded Sarah's final years. But one thing was clear. Wherever she was now, Robert would do everything he could to honor her sacrifice and protect the precious legacy she had left behind. Night fell slowly over the city, wrapping the Lux Hotel in deep shadows. In the top-floor office, Robert Johnson remained awake, eyes fixed on Sarah's photographs, searching each image for clues he might have missed, signs he should have noticed. The clock neared midnight when his phone buzzed with a message from Frank. "Found something in the hospital records. The nurse didn't tell us everything. Meeting tomorrow, first thing?" Robert felt a chill creep down his spine. What else was there to discover? What other dark secrets had Sarah carried in her final days? Rising from his chair, he walked to the window. The city glittered under the night sky, thousands of lights blinking like earthly stars. Out there somewhere lay the answers he sought, the truth of what happened to his daughter. "Forgive me, Sarah," he whispered into the night. "I promise I'll make it right. Your children will never have to run or be afraid again. This time, I'll do the right thing." With those words echoing in his mind, Robert finally left his office. Tomorrow would be another day of seeking answers, another day trying to piece together the puzzle his daughter had left behind. And this time, he wouldn't rest until he uncovered the whole truth, no matter how painful it might be. Dawn had barely broken when Robert arrived at the crash site. The secondary road, bordered by tall pines, looked strangely peaceful in the soft morning light. It was hard to imagine that here, on this seemingly harmless curve, his daughter's life had come to a tragic end. Frank was already waiting, speaking with a retired local police officer who had responded to the accident. The ex-officer, Tom Miller, had tired eyes that had seen far too many tragedies in his career. "It was one of the worst I've ever seen," Tom remarked, leading them to the exact spot where Sarah's car had veered off the road. The driver was clearly running from something. The tire tracks showed she was well over the speed limit. Robert's stomach churned at the sight of the still visible scratches on the guardrail. And the children. "A miracle," Tom shook his head. "The woman, your daughter, must have done some maneuver at the last second. The driver's side took the full impact. The three little ones were in the back seat, protected by well-installed car seats. We found this in the wreckage," Frank interjected, handing Robert a battered, yellowed envelope. "It was in a waterproof box under the driver's seat, addressed to you." With trembling hands, Robert opened the envelope. Sarah's elegant handwriting, so familiar, made his heart clench. "Dear Dad," the letter began, "if you're reading this, something went wrong. It means I couldn't get to you in time to explain everything face to face as I planned." Robert had to pause for a moment, tears blurring his vision. Tom and Frank discreetly stepped away, giving him privacy to read his daughter's final words. "I know you must be furious with me for disappearing, for cutting off all contact, but Dad, I had no choice. When I discovered the truth about James, about who he really was, it was too late for me, but not for my kids. Emily was born in the midst of chaos. James showed his true colors right after, the control, the violence, the threats. I tried to endure, thinking I could change him. What a fool I was. When I found out I was pregnant with the twins, I knew I had to run. James has dangerous connections. Dad. People in high places who protect him, who cover up his crimes. I tried reporting him once, and I almost paid with my life. I'm heading home now, Dad. I finally realized I need your help. But if something happens to me, please protect my children. Emily is so strong, so brave. She doesn't deserve to carry the weight I placed on her tiny shoulders. With all my love, Sarah." Robert carefully folded the letter, his mind processing every word. Sarah had been on her way back to him. She had finally come for his help when a piercing scream broke the morning calm, coming from the car where Emily had dozed off during the trip. Robert ran over, finding the girl thrashing around in the back seat, caught in another nightmare. "Mommy, the black car! It's coming!" she screamed, her eyes still closed. "Emily, wake up!" "There's just a dream." Robert gently shook her until her eyes, filled with terror, snapped open. For a long moment, Emily just gasped for breath, slowly realizing where she was. Then her eyes focused on the landscape outside the window, and all color drained from her face. "Here," she whispered. "It was here." "Do you remember what happened?" Robert asked softly. Emily nodded, silent tears rolling down her face. "It was raining. Mommy was driving really fast, saying we were almost there, that we'd be safe soon. Then we saw headlights in the mirror, a black car. Mommy got so scared." Her voice faltered, and Robert held her close, feeling her little body tremble. "What happened next, sweetheart?" "The black car. It hit us, on purpose. Mommy lost control. She yelled at me to protect the babies. Then everything went dark." Robert felt an icy rage grow in his chest. It hadn't been an accident. Sarah had been murdered. "How did you take care of your siblings afterward?" he asked gently. Emily took a deep breath as though summoning courage. "When I woke up, it was really quiet. The babies were crying, but Mommy wouldn't move. I tried to wake her, but she was so cold." The words poured out now like a flood, as though Emily could finally let go of the burden she'd been carrying for so long. "I remembered what Mommy always said. If something happens, protect the twins. They need you. She had a bag in the trunk for emergencies. She showed me where it was. It had money, papers, diapers, food." "How did you get out of the car?" Robert asked, marveling at this tiny survivor's strength. My seatbelt was stuck, but I could reach Mom's backpack. She always carried a small knife in there for emergencies. I cut the belt and then I had to drag the babies out. They were crying so loud. Emily wiped her tears with the sleeve of her coat. Mom taught me everything. Don't trust anyone, she said. If something happens, grab your brothers and find shelter. Don't use cards. Don't call anyone. He has eyes everywhere. So you ran off with the babies? Yes, I walked until I found a bigger road. A truck driver gave us a ride to the nearest city. After that, we hopped from shelter to shelter. I always made sure no one asked too many questions. When they did, we left. Robert was in awe of the courage and wit of this 5-year-old child. How did you manage to take care of the twins by yourself? Mom taught me everything, Emily said with sad pride. How to make formula, change diapers, calm them when they cry. She said I was her little special helper. In the shelters, there were always other moms who helped too, even without asking questions. And money. Mom left plenty in the emergency bag. I only used it for food and diapers like she taught me, but it was almost gone. That's why we came here. We were nearly out of money and it was so cold. Robert pulled Emily closer, his heart breaking at the thought of this small child carrying such a heavy load alone. You were incredibly brave, Emily. Your mom would be very proud. Emily looked up at him, her eyes so much like Sarah's. She said someone here could help us. That if something happened, we should look for the Lux Hotel. She wrote the address on a piece of paper, but I lost it. Robert felt the puzzle pieces clicking into place. Sarah had been bringing the children to him. She had finally been coming home when she was intercepted. Back at the hotel, after Emily had finally fallen into a peaceful sleep with the twins, Robert met with Frank in his office. What did you find out about the black car? Witnesses saw it leaving the scene in a hurry, Frank answered, checking his notes. No license plate, tinted windows. A luxury model, probably an Audi A8. And James, Frank hesitated. James St. Clair. Successful real estate businessman with significant political ties. No official criminal record, but he slid over some photos. I found records of at least 3 ex-girlfriends who vanished without a trace. All investigations were closed with no conclusions. Robert examined the documents, anger simmering inside him. He's coming back, isn't he? Yes, Frank confirmed grimly. My contacts say he's been asking questions around town. It's only a matter of time before he finds out where the kids are. Robert rose, gazing out the window at the city starting to wake. Then we need to be ready, he said with determination. Sarah couldn't protect the children to the end, but I can. And I will. Sir, Frank sounded hesitant, James St. Clair is a dangerous man with extensive resources and connections. And I'm Robert Johnson, Robert interrupted, his voice steeled with resolve. He may have money and connections, but I built an empire. He wants to play? Fine. But this time, the rules are mine. That night, watching Emily sleep curled up with the twins, Robert made a silent vow to Sarah. He had failed to protect her, but he would not fail her children. The storm was coming, but this time, he was ready to face it. Sarah's letter rested on his desk, a constant reminder of the cost of his past mistakes. But it was also a testament to his daughter's extraordinary courage, a courage he saw reflected every day in Emily's determined eyes. The sun began to set over the city, painting the sky in shades of red and gold. Somewhere out there, James St. Clair was closing in, bringing with him the shadows of the past. But this time, those shadows would find more than defenseless children. They would find a grandfather determined to protect his daughter's legacy, no matter the cost. The real battle was only beginning, and Robert Johnson was ready to do whatever was necessary to keep his family safe. The time for running had passed. Now it was time to face the shadows head-on. Night gave way to morning as Robert remained in his office, Sarah's letter still in his hands. Her words echoed in his mind, each sentence revealing another layer of the nightmare she had lived. The rising sun cast long shadows across the floor, like ghostly fingers stretching toward the secret still waiting to be uncovered. A soft sound at the door brought him back to the present. It was Emily, still in her pajamas, her small bare feet quiet on the luxurious carpet. "Couldn't sleep either?" Robert asked gently, opening his arms to her. Emily shook her head, stepping closer to sit in his lap. Her eyes, so like Sarah's, landed on the letter on the desk. "Is that from Mommy?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. "Yes," Robert answered, noticing how Emily's hands fidgeted nervously. "She wrote it to me, saying she was coming home." Emily was very still for a moment, as though processing the information. "She talked a lot about going home," she finally said. "These last weeks, she kept looking at old photos and crying. There was one in particular she always carried." "Which photo, sweetheart?" Emily slipped off Robert's lap and went over to the shopping cart, now cleaned and stored in a corner of the office. With nimble fingers, she lifted part of the lining, revealing a hidden compartment. From there, she took out a folded, worn photograph. Robert felt his heart stop when he saw the picture. It was him and Sarah at the last Christmas they spent together, before their fight. They were smiling at the camera as they decorated the Christmas tree, a long-standing family tradition. "She said that was her last happy Christmas," Emily remarked, tracing the photo's outline with her finger. "Sometimes, when she thought I was asleep, she'd talk to the photo, saying she was sorry." Robert swallowed hard, remembering the final words he and Sarah exchanged. How much precious time had been wasted on pride and stubbornness. "Emily," he began gently, "can you tell me more about how you cared for your brothers after the accident? I know it's hard to talk about, but I need to understand everything that happened." Emily climbed back into his lap, still clutching the photo. When she spoke, her voice carried a maturity beyond her years, breaking Robert's heart. "Mom always prepared me for the worst," she said. "Every day we played something she called the survival game. She taught me where to find hidden money, how to make baby formula correctly, how to change diapers. She said I was her little warrior, and that I needed to be ready for anything." "So you already knew what to do when she didn't wake up," Emily completed, her voice trembling slightly. "She had a list in the emergency bag. Steps I should follow. 1. Check the babies. 2. Grab the emergency bag. 3. Leave without being seen. 4. Never use cards or make phone calls. 5. Go to different shelters every few days." Robert listened, equal parts amazed and horrified. Sarah had turned her 5-year-old daughter into a miniature survival strategist. "At the first shelter," Emily went on, "a lady named Rosa helped me a lot. She realized I was alone with the twins, but asked no questions. She taught me tricks to soothe the babies when they cried all at once, how to bathe them without using too much water." "How long did you stay there?" 3 days. Mom said never to stay in the same place longer than that. "Constant movement keeps you safe," she always said. Emily paused, frowning in concentration. "Then we got a ride with a truck driver to another city. He was nice, reminded me of Grandpa in the pictures." Robert felt his heart tighten. "What other pictures did your mom keep?" Emily went back to the cart, rummaging in the hidden compartment. From there, she pulled out a small battered notebook, its pages filled with Sarah's elegant handwriting. "Her diary," Emily explained, handing it to Robert with reverent care. "She wrote in it every night, after she thought I was asleep. Sometimes she cried while writing." With trembling hands, Robert opened the diary. The first pages dated back 5 years, soon after Sarah had left home. "October 12th. Found out today I'm pregnant. My first thought was to call Dad, to share the news like I always dreamed. But then I remembered our last conversation, the hurtful words. How could I have been so blind? James showed his true face today, the control, the anger. I'm so afraid." Robert kept reading, each page revealing more of the nightmare his daughter had endured. The diary documented the escalation of abuse, failed attempts to seek legal help, and the shocking discoveries about James's real business dealings. March 15th. Emily is my light. So small, so strong. James ignores her completely, which might be a blessing. Today I discovered more about his business, the political connections, The dirty money. I tried gathering evidence, but he has eyes everywhere. If something happens to me, I need to make sure Emily is prepared. June 2nd, pregnant again, twins. When the doctor told me, I cried for hours, not with joy, but with terror. I have to get my children out of here before it's too late. I started training Emily, turning everything into a game so she wouldn't be scared. My little warrior learns quickly. The following pages detailed Sarah's methodical plan to escape: secret bank accounts, false identities, carefully planned escape routes. She had thought of everything, preparing every detail. December 10th. The twins were born today. They're perfect. Emily loves them already, humming the same lullabies Dad used to sing to me. My heart aches for him. Will he ever forgive me? Will he understand I ran not out of rebellion but for survival? Robert had to stop reading for a moment, tears blurring his vision again. Emily snuggled closer to him, silently offering comfort. There were more hiding spots in the cart, she said softly. Mum kept important papers in lots of different places. She said never to keep all your eggs in one basket. Robert smiled sadly at the old saying he used to repeat to Sarah when she was little. With Emily's help, they began methodically searching the cart. In various hidden compartments, they discovered an impressive collection of evidence: bank statements showing suspicious transactions, photos of clandestine meetings, documents proving James's involvement in illegal enterprises. Sarah was building a case against him, Robert murmured, in awe of his daughter's bravery and intelligence. She wasn't just running away, she was gathering proof. Frank arrived at the office a few hours later, bringing more news. James is definitely in town, he reported, face grim. He's been asking questions, showing pictures of the kids. He's using his contacts in the police to track them down. Robert nodded, his resolve hardening. What about the therapist? Dr. Martinez can start today. She has experience with traumatized children and understands the need for discretion. Emily, who had dozed off on the office couch, began to stir. No. The black car. Mommy. Watch out, she murmured. Robert gently woke her, noticing how her small frame shook. It's all right, dear. It was just a dream. But it was not just a dream, he knew. They were memories surfacing, pieces of the puzzle clicking into place. I think it's time for us to talk with Dr. Martinez, he said softly. She's a special doctor who helps children understand their dreams and memories. Would you like that? Emily hesitated, then nodded slowly. Mom said sometimes we need help carrying the heavy things in our hearts. That afternoon, Dr. Martinez, a middle-aged woman with kind eyes and a calm voice, arrived. She sat down with Emily in a specially prepared room filled with toys and art supplies. Through the one-way glass, Robert watched as Emily gradually opened up. With dolls and drawings, she reconstructed the final days with Sarah, each memory adding more clarity to the puzzle. It was raining a lot, Emily explained, moving a toy car. Mom said we were almost there, that Grandpa would help us. Then we saw the headlights of the black car in the mirror. The session lasted 2 hours, during which Emily revealed more details of her survival journey after the accident, how she managed to switch the twins and feed them with just one arm, since the other was injured, how she learned to sleep sitting up on the bus, always with a baby in each arm, how she developed a color-coded ribbon system to know which bottle belonged to which baby. She's extraordinary, Dr. Martinez commented afterward, meeting with Robert. Her capacity for adaptation and resilience is remarkable, but she's also carrying a huge burden for someone so young. She'll need a lot of support to process everything. Robert nodded, glancing at Emily, who was now playing with the twins in the next room. She'll have all the support in the world. She'll never have to carry that burden alone again. That evening, after the children were asleep, Robert returned to Sarah's diary. The last pages revealed her final plan. April 20th, finally. I have enough proof. Documents, photos, recordings, all stashed in different places, just like Dad taught me. James found out I've been collecting evidence. I don't have much time. Tomorrow we leave for home. For Dad. He'll know what to do, like he always has. I just hope he can forgive me. That was the last entry. The next day, Sarah died on that rainy road, only hours from home, only hours from safety. Robert's phone vibrated with a message from Frank. Suspicious movement around the hotel. James may have located us. Robert looked at the sleeping children. Emily had survived so long on her own, protecting her brothers with a strength that defied her age. Now it was his turn to protect them. Picking up his phone, he started making calls. It was time to use all his power and influence for one purpose only: to keep his family safe. Sarah had died trying to bring her children home. He would not let her sacrifice be in vain. Night fell slowly, and Robert kept vigil, Sarah's diary in his hands, her gathered evidence spread out on his desk. The puzzle was nearly complete. Tomorrow, James would try to claim the children. But this time, he would find more than a frightened young mother or a 5-year-old struggling to protect her siblings. This time, he would face Robert Johnson, a man determined to right the wrongs of the past and protect the precious legacy of his daughter. The final battle was coming, and Robert was ready. Emily stirred in her sleep, mumbling something about home and safety. Robert smiled gently, tucking the blanket around her. Yes, they were home now, and this time he would make sure they stayed safe. At 3 in the morning, Frank sent another message. "He's here, at the hotel, arrived 10 minutes ago." Robert glanced again at the sleeping children, then at the picture of Sarah smiling in their last happy Christmas. It was time to face the demons of the past. "I'm on my way," he replied to Frank. "Get everything ready as we planned." The moment of the final confrontation had arrived, and this time the shadows of the past would meet more than defenseless victims. They would meet a grandfather determined to protect his family at any cost. Morning arrived cold and grey at the Lux Hotel, the sky heavy with the promise of more snow. Robert had been in his office since the early hours, reviewing the dossier Frank had just delivered on James St. Clair. "Businessman of the Year in 2022, Frank pointed to a magazine photo of James in a perfectly tailored suit, smiling alongside prominent politicians. He built a real estate empire in record time. His specialty is urban revitalization. He buys properties in poor areas, forces out the residents, and rebuilds for a luxury clientele." Robert studied the photo, noting the cold eyes behind the calculated smile. Political connections. "Too many." Frank slid more documents across the desk. "He has 3 senators in his pocket, half the police department, judges. He's built an impressive web of influence over the years. No one ever questioned where his money came from. Some tried." Frank hesitated. 2 investigative journalists died in accidents while looking into his operations. A district attorney building a case against him had a sudden heart attack at 45. Robert felt a shiver run up his spine. "Sarah found out something about his business, didn't she?" "From what I gathered in her diary, yes. She started noticing suspicious patterns, large sums of money being laundered through his real estate developments, politicians receiving bribes disguised as campaign donations." A soft knock on the door interrupted them. It was Emily, still in her pajamas, holding her favorite stuffed bunny. "Good morning, sweetheart." Robert quickly closed the files. "Did you sleep well?" Emily shook her head. "I had bad dreams. About the bad man." Robert and Frank exchanged worried looks. "Which bad man, Emily?" "The one who made Mommy cry," she replied, climbing onto Robert's lap. "He's close. I can feel it." Almost as if confirming Emily's words, Frank's phone buzzed with a text. His face paled as he read it. "He just filed an emergency custody petition in court," Frank said grimly, "claiming he's the twins' biological father and that you kidnapped them, Robert." Robert held Emily tighter, feeling her small body stiffen. "Call our legal team. I want the best family lawyers in the country here within 2 hours. And Frank, implement the shadow protocol." Frank nodded, making a flurry of phone calls. The shadow protocol was the contingency plan they had devised over the past few weeks, preparing for this exact moment. "Emily," Robert said gently, "remember when we talked about possibly needing to make another trip?" The girl nodded, her wide eyes serious. "Like the hiding games Mommy used to do?" "Something like that." But this time, you won't be alone. I'll be with you and the twins the whole time." An hour later, the presidential suite was a hub of controlled activity. A team of elite lawyers filled the living room, while security experts swept the entire perimeter. Diana Chen, the lead family attorney, studied the documents spread across the dining table turned makeshift office. "He's clever," she observed, adjusting her glasses. "He's built a perfect public image. Philanthropist, champion of social causes. It'll be hard to convince a judge he's dangerous without solid evidence." "We have Sarah's diary," Robert argued, "photos of her injuries, hospital records." "Which can be explained away as accidents," Diana pointed out. "We need more. Something he can't deny or explain." As if on cue, Frank rushed into the room. "I found something. A former employee at James's mansion, Maria Gonzalez. She was there while Sarah lived with him. She's willing to testify." "Where is she now?" "Hiding. After Sarah fled, James fired her and tried to have her deported. She's been living in the shadows ever since, but she kept evidence, photos, recordings." Robert stood. "Bring her here." Immediately, while the legal machine churned, Robert oversaw preparations to move. A safe house on the outskirts of the city had been readied, modern, fortified, and most importantly, legally untouchable through a complex network of shell companies. Emily watched everything with alert eyes, helping pack the twins' things with a heartbreaking efficiency. She still carried the reflexes of her months on the run. "Grandpa," she called softly, using the term for the first time, "is the bad man going to hurt us like he hurt Mommy?" Robert knelt to her level, taking her small hands in his. "No, sweetheart. Never again. I promise I'll protect you no matter what." By mid-afternoon, Maria Gonzalez arrived, escorted by two of Frank's most trusted security guards. She was a small, middle-aged woman with eyes that had seen too much. "Mr. Johnson," she began, her hands trembling slightly. "There's so much I need to tell you. Your daughter, she was an angel. I tried to help her when I realized what was happening, but he has eyes everywhere." For 2 hours, Maria recounted in detail the nightmare she had witnessed, the violent arguments, the bruises Sarah tried to hide, the suspicious calls in the middle of the night. "She found something," Maria explained, "something in his papers. One night, I found her in the office, copying documents with shaking hands. She said she needed proof, that nobody would believe her otherwise." "Where are those documents now?" Diana asked. "Sarah hid them. She made me memorize a series of numbers, said they were important, that someone would need them one day." Robert felt his heart race. "What numbers?" Maria recited a string of digits Robert immediately recognized. It was the code for a safety deposit box at the bank where Sarah had once interned. "Frank." "Already on it," the investigator said, heading out the door. While they waited, the security team finished loading up for the move. The safe house was ready, with multiple escape routes and state-of-the-art surveillance. Emily, exhausted by the day's events, had fallen asleep on the office sofa, still clutching her stuffed rabbit. Robert gently covered her, noticing how much she resembled Sarah at that age. The phone rang. It was the hotel front desk. "Mr. Johnson, there's a man here insisting on seeing you. James St. Clair." Robert felt his blood run cold. "How much longer until we're ready to leave?" he whispered to the head of security. 20 minutes, max." "Keep him busy," Robert instructed the front desk. "Tell him I'm in an important conference." The next few minutes were a whirlwind of controlled, silent activity. The children, still asleep, were carefully moved to an armored car. Essential documents were secured, evidence distributed among different safe locations. When the private elevator finally reached the ground floor, carrying Robert with Emily in his arms and the guards with the twins, James was still arguing at the front desk. Through the glass doors, Robert caught his first glimpse of the man who had destroyed his daughter's life. Tall, well-dressed, exuding natural authority, and eyes that reminded Robert of a calculating predator. For a moment, their gazes locked. Robert saw the flicker of recognition cross James's face, followed by something more sinister, a silent promise that this wasn't over. But Robert didn't stay to see more. With military precision, the convoy of cars left the hotel through a side exit, disappearing into the quickly falling night. At the safe house, after settling the children into their new rooms, Robert got a call from Frank. "We found the documents in the safety deposit box." The investigator's voice was charged with excitement. "Robert, it's much bigger than we thought. Sarah didn't just uncover his money laundering operations. She found evidence tying James to disappearances, murders. Keep everything secure," Robert instructed. "Tomorrow we start the counterattack." After hanging up, he lingered a moment, watching Emily sleep. In the next room, the twins breathed softly in their cribs. Through the bulletproof window, the city glimmered under the night sky, seemingly peaceful. But Robert knew the real battle was only beginning. James St. Clair had built an empire on secrets and blood, and he wouldn't easily relinquish his last intended victims. The difference was that this time, he would face not a frightened young mother or a lone child protecting her siblings. He would face Robert Johnson, a man with resources equal to his own, connections just as powerful, and something James never had: a just cause. The phone buzzed with a message from Diana. "Preliminary hearing set for tomorrow, 9 a.m. "He's moving fast," Robert smiled grimly. James wanted a war, fine, but this time it would be on Robert's terms. Outside, snow began to fall, reminding Robert of the night he found the children. Fate had given him a second chance, a chance to protect what Sarah had loved most, to be the father and grandfather he should have been from the start. This time, he wouldn't fail. Maria Gonzalez was safely installed in a secure room of the house, her evidence carefully catalogued by the legal team. Her presence was a constant reminder of what was at stake, not just the children's future, but the very justice Sarah had died fighting to achieve. In the improvised command center in the house's basement, Robert gathered his team: lawyers, investigators, security experts, all carefully chosen, all with a single goal: protect the children and expose James for who he truly was. "Starting tomorrow," he announced, "we launch our offensive. James wants to use the legal system. Great. We'll show him what it's like to face someone who can really fight back." Diana nodded, sorting through her documents. "I've prepared the initial responses, and with the new evidence Frank found—" "No," Robert interrupted. "Hold the key evidence for the right moment. Let James think he's winning, that he has the upper hand. The more confident he is, the more careless he'll become." Frank smiled, recognizing the tactic. "Just like old times, boss. Let the opponent think he's winning until it's too late." Night wore on, and while the team worked on preparations for the impending legal battle, Robert went upstairs to check on the children again. Emily was sitting up in bed, gazing at the snow falling outside. "Can't sleep?" he asked softly. She shook her head. "Mummy always said snow was magic, that it could hide our tracks when we needed to run." Robert sat beside her, pulling her close. "You don't have to run anymore, sweetheart. Now it's our turn to fight." Emily looked at him with those Sarah-like eyes. "Promise you won't leave us, that you won't give up on us like everyone else did." "I promise," Robert replied firmly. "I'll never abandon my family again, never." Outside, the snow continued to fall, covering the city with its silent blanket. Somewhere, James St. Clair was planning his next move, confident in his power and influence. But this time, the shadows of the past would find more than defenseless victims. They would find a united family, shielded by a man determined to fix past mistakes and ensure a safe future for the grandchildren fate had returned to him. The real battle was just beginning, and Robert Johnson stood ready to fight to the end. The state Supreme Court was packed that morning. A tense hush filled the air as those present awaited the start of the hearing that would decide the children's fate. Robert straightened his tie, occasionally glancing at Emily, who waited in a nearby room with Dr. Martinez, protected from the drama about to unfold. James St. Clair sat at the petitioner's table with his lawyers, his relaxed demeanor radiating a confidence that made Robert's blood boil. How could this man appear so calm after all he'd done? Diana Chen, Robert's lead attorney, carefully organized her documents. Ready? She whispered. Once we start, there's no turning back. Robert nodded. The past weeks had been a roller coaster of preparations, witness statements, and shocking discoveries. Frank had done an extraordinary job, unearthing evidence even Sarah hadn't known existed. All rise, announced the bailiff. The State Supreme Court is now in session, the Honorable Judge Catherine Montgomery presiding. Judge Montgomery was known for her unwavering integrity, one of the few people James hadn't managed to sway. Her sharp eyes took in the courtroom before settling on the lawyers. This court is convened to decide custody of Emily, Sophie, and Maxwell St. Clair Johnson, she began. Given the sensitive nature of this case and the serious accusations on both sides, I will proceed with great caution. Mr. Reynolds, please present Mr. St. Clair's case. James's attorney rose, adjusting his expensive suit. Your Honor, my client is a respected businessman, a philanthropist, and most importantly, the biological father of 3 children who were unlawfully taken from him. Mr. Johnson, using his influence and financial power, essentially kidnapped these children. Objection, Your Honor, Diana interrupted. That is an inaccurate portrayal of the facts. Sustained, the judge replied. Mr. Reynolds, stick to provable facts. For an hour, James's attorney painted a picture of a devoted father, unjustly separated from his children by an unstable ex-partner and a controlling father-in-law. He presented carefully chosen photos, testimonies from friends about James's exemplary character, and records of generous donations to children's charities. Robert watched with a mixture of disgust and grudging admiration at the well-rehearsed performance. If he didn't know the truth, he might have believed the story they were telling. Finally, it was Diana's turn. She rose calmly, adjusting her glasses. Your Honor, before I present our evidence, I would like to call our first witness, Carlos Martinez, former driver for Mr. St. Clair. James shifted imperceptibly in his seat, his mask of confidence wavering momentarily. Carlos entered the courtroom, a middle-aged man with visible scars on his face. After taking the oath, Diana began her questioning. Mr. Martinez, how long did you work for Mr. St. Clair? 5 years, ma'am. I was his personal driver from 2018 to 2023. During that time, did you have occasion to observe his interactions with Sarah Johnson? Carlos swallowed hard. Yes, ma'am, I drove them everywhere. I saw a lot more than I wanted. Could you elaborate? At first, she seemed happy, but then arguments started in the car. He would grab her arm too tightly. One time, he hesitated. Go on, Mr. Martinez, the judge prompted. One time, he shoved her into the car so hard her head hit the door. She was pregnant with Emily at the time. He said if she ever tried to leave, nobody would ever find her. James's lawyer jumped to his feet. Objection, hearsay? Overruled, the judge responded. The witness is describing direct observations. For 2 hours, Carlos detailed a pattern of abuse and control that left many in the courtroom gasping. He described nights he had to drive Sarah secretly to the hospital, thinly veiled threats against her life and Emily's, suspicious meetings with men who looked more like criminals than businessmen. And why are you testifying now, Mr. Martinez? Diana asked. Carlos touched his scars. Because I tried to help her escape once. That's how I got these. And because, his voice faltered, because on the night of the accident I saw the black car that followed her. I recognized the driver, one of Mr. St. Clair's special security guys. A murmur rippled through the courtroom. James maintained a neutral expression, but his fingers drummed nervously on the table. Diana then brought in her next witness, Maria Gonzalez. The former housekeeper gave a poignant account of how she'd helped Sarah hide incriminating documents, how she'd found Sarah crying countless times, how she'd heard James on the phone ordering people to take care of the problem. The final straw, Maria recounted, was when he began showing interest in Emily. Not like a father. It was something more sinister. Sarah realized then she had to run. As the morning wore on, Diana systematically built her case. She presented detailed hospital records of Sarah's injuries, recovered emails showing James's veiled threats, security camera footage capturing moments of violence he never knew had been recorded. Then came the moment Robert dreaded most, Emily's recorded statement. The courtroom watched in silence as the video played of Emily, sitting with Dr. Martinez, describing her life with her mother, the constant running, the terror in Sarah's eyes whenever she saw a black car, and finally, the fatal night of the accident. "Mommy was happy that day," Emily said in the video, her small voice clear but soft. "She said we were finally going home, that Grandpa would help us. Then we saw headlights in the mirror. She got so scared. The black car hit us on purpose. Right before we hit the tree, Mommy shouted, 'Protect the babies.' That was the last thing she said to me." There wasn't a dry eye in the courtroom when the video ended. Even Judge Montgomery took a moment to compose herself, but Diana wasn't finished. "Your Honor, I would like to present our final piece of evidence," she signaled to Frank, who walked in carrying a sealed folder. "These are the documents Sarah Johnson gathered in the last months of her life. They detail a massive criminal operation involving money laundering, extortion and—" She paused for effect. "Multiple contracted murders." James finally lost his composure. "This is ridiculous. These accusations are outrageous." "Mr. Saint." "Claire," the judge cautioned sternly, "maintain your composure or you will be removed from the courtroom." Diana pressed on, relentless. "Among these documents, Your Honor, is an audio recording from the night of the accident. Sarah, fearing for her life, activated her phone's recorder. The device was recovered from the wreck. The entire room held its breath as the recording began. "Faster!" Sarah's panicked voice. "They're coming!" Sounds of the engine revving, tires screeching. "Mommy, I'm scared." Emily's voice. "It'll be okay, sweetie. We're almost—" "Oh God, no." Metal on metal, a collision. "This is a message from Mr. Saint." "Claire," an unknown male voice. "No one runs from him." More sounds of impact and screams. Then silence. James was pale now, his lawyers whispering furiously among themselves. Robert barely noticed them. His heart was breaking, hearing his daughter's final moments. That was when he asked to speak. "Your Honor," he began, rising to his feet. "I know I've made many mistakes. I failed my daughter when she needed me most. My pride and stubbornness cost me precious years I could have spent with Sarah and my grandchildren." His voice shook, but remained steady. "But I'm not here just seeking redemption. I'm here because 3 innocent children need protection. Emily Hiwan, who at 5 years old has shown more courage and strength than most adults I know. Sophie and Maxwell, who've barely started life and have already known so much suffering. Sarah," his voice caught momentarily, "my daughter died trying to save her children, trying to bring them to me. She believed, till her last breath, that I could protect them. I can't bring her back. I can't undo my past errors, but I can honor her final wish. I can give her kids the love, safety, and family she always wanted for them." The courtroom was silent when he finished. Judge Montgomery studied him at length before speaking. "This court has seen substantial evidence of abuse, manipulation, and most grave of all, direct involvement in what now appears to be premeditated murder. Mr. St. Clair, you are hereby remanded into custody." As officers approached James, she continued, "Sole and permanent custody of the children is granted to Robert Johnson. Furthermore, all evidence presented here will be forwarded to the District Attorney's Office for criminal investigation." James was taken away in handcuffs, his veneer of civility stripped away, hurling threats and accusations. But Robert barely heard him. His eyes were fixed on the side door where Emily was running in. "Is it over?" she asked, throwing herself into his arms. "Can we stay with you forever?" "Yes, sweetheart," he answered, tears streaming freely down his face. "You're home now, for good." That evening, in the house that was now truly theirs, Robert watched Emily playing with the twins in the living room. For the first time since he found them, she really looked like a 5-year-old child. Not a miniature adult carrying the weight of the world. Dr. Martinez, who stayed for dinner, smiled at the scene. "It will take time," she remarked, "but they'll heal. Children are incredibly resilient when they feel safe and loved. Robert nodded, thinking of Sarah. Somewhere, he hoped, she was seeing this, seeing her kids finally safe and finally home. "Grandpa," Emily called out, holding up a book, "can you read us a story? Mommy always read before bedtime." "Of course, darling," he answered, settling on the rug with them. Sophie and Maxwell immediately crawled into his lap, while Emily snuggled by his side. As he read, Robert reflected on how life could change in an instant. A few weeks ago, he'd been a lonely man, consumed by regret. Now, he was a grandfather, responsible for 3 little lives that had transformed his world. The healing process would be long. There would be nightmares, rough moments, and painful memories to confront, but they would face it together, as a family. Snow began to fall outside, reminiscent of that fateful night when 3 tiny refugees knocked on his door. But this time, instead of fear and despair, the snow carried the promise of new beginnings and happy memories waiting to be made. Emily was already asleep when he finished the story, her little hand clutching the blue ribbon that had belonged to Sarah. The twins had dozed off as well, their peaceful faces pressed against him. Gently, so as not to wake them, Robert took out his phone and sent a message to Diana. "Prepare the papers to legally change their last name to Johnson. Sarah would want that," the reply came quickly. "Already in progress. And Robert, she would be proud of all of you." Robert looked up at the portrait of Sarah now hanging in a place of honor on the living room wall. His daughter smiled with that radiant grin he missed so much, the same grin he saw in Emily's face when she was truly happy. "Thank you, Sarah," he whispered, "for giving me a second chance, for trusting your most precious treasures to me. I promise I won't let you down this time." Outside, the snow kept falling, covering the city in white. Yet inside that home, warmed not only by the heat but by the love of a reunited family, winter felt far away. The nightmare was over. The healing had begun. And for the first time in a long while, the future looked full of promise. Spring arrived in the city, bringing the scent of flowers and promises of renewal. Robert watched from the porch as landscapers put the finishing touches on the garden of the new house, an elegant mansion in the suburbs, surrounded by ancient trees and enough space for 3 children to grow up free and safe. "Grandpa," Emily's voice rang out from the yard. "Look, the roses we planted are sprouting." Robert smiled, walking down the steps to join his granddaughter. Emily was kneeling by the small flower bed they had prepared together, her eyes shining with excitement at the sight of the first red buds. "They're just like the ones Mommy loved most," she said softly, gently touching a petal. "Yes, they are," Robert agreed, remembering how Sarah always kept a vase of red roses in her room. "She'd be so happy to see you taking care of them." Across the garden, cheerful shouts erupted. Sophie and Maxwell, now nearly 2 years old, had just taken their first steps at the same time, encouraged by their nanny Maria Gonzalez, who was now a permanent member of the family. "They did it," Emily cried, running over to hug her siblings. "Grandpa, they're walking." Robert grabbed his phone and recorded the precious moment, the twins wobbling through their first uncertain steps, Emily clapping wildly, the late afternoon sun casting a golden glow over the scene like pure magic. Later that day, in his office at the new headquarters of the Sarah Johnson Family Protection Foundation, Robert reviewed the latest reports. In just 6 months, the foundation had already helped dozens of families escape abusive situations, offering legal support, safe housing, and a chance to start over. Diana Chen, now the foundation's legal director, entered with a folder of documents. The last families were successfully relocated, she informed him, and the Children's Support Center is ready for its grand opening next week. Robert nodded in satisfaction. On the wall behind his desk hung a large photo of Sarah smiling, her gentle eyes seeming to approve of the work being done in her name. "How's Emily doing at her new school?" Diana asked. "Surprisingly well," Robert smiled. "After all the initial worries, she's thriving. She's made 2 close friends, and her teacher says she's one of the best students in class." It was true. After months of therapy with Dr. Martinez and plenty of love and patience, Emily was finally acting like a normal child of her age. The nightmares had lessened, replaced by dreams of ordinary play and adventures. The phone rang, Maria calling to say Emily was home from school and eager to show something off. "Go," Diana said, smiling. "Your family needs you." At home, Emily waited in the living room, proudly holding up a colorful paper. "Look, Grandpa, I won the award for best essay in class." Robert examined her work, titled My Family. The words, written in Emily's careful handwriting, moved him deeply. "My family is different from most. I have 2 baby twin siblings who are the cutest ever, even when they both cry at the same time. I have a nanny who makes the best cookies and tells stories in Spanish. And I have the best grandpa in the universe who saved us when we needed it most. My mom is an angel now, but she still watches over us from the sky. Sometimes I miss her, but I know she's happy because we're safe and loved. Grandpa says she smiles every time we smile, so I try to smile a lot. Some might think our family is small or strange, but to me, it's perfect. Because it's not about how big a family is, but how much love there is in it. And in our family, we have enough love to fill the whole world." Robert hugged Emily, silent tears rolling down his face. "Did you like it, Grandpa?" she asked, her voice small and hopeful. "I loved it, darling. Your mother would be so proud." "I know," Emily smiled, that radiant grin so reminiscent of Sarah's. "She's always proud of us now." A year had passed since that snowy night when 3 tiny refugees knocked on his door. A year of challenges, discoveries, healing, and above all, love. The twins now filled the house with their giggles and first words, their distinct personalities emerging. Sophie, curious and determined like Sarah, always leading their little adventures. Maxwell, sweet and observant, ever ready for a hug. Emily, his little warrior, had finally found peace. There were still tough moments, of course, days when she missed Sarah more, when the memories of the past cast shadows in her eyes. But now she knew she didn't have to bear those burdens alone. Robert established new family traditions. Sundays were for picnics in the garden, no matter the weather. Each night he read stories to the children, just as Sarah used to do. And on special dates, they lit a candle beside her photo, sharing happy stories and memories. The mansion that once felt empty and cold now overflowed with life. The children's drawings hung on walls beside valuable artwork. Toys shared space with antiques. And in every room, family photos captured precious moments of this new life they had built together. That evening, after tucking the twins in, Robert found Emily in her favorite spot, the garden bench under the old oak tree. "What are you thinking about?" he asked, sitting beside her. "How everything changed," she answered, her eyes reflecting the first stars appearing in the sky. "Before, I was so scared, always running, always hiding. Now I feel at home," she smiled, snuggling against him. "You know, Grandpa, Mommy always said we'd find our safe place someday. I think she knew it would be here with you." Robert hugged his granddaughter, his heart brimming with love and gratitude. "You 3 are my safe place too, sweetheart. You've all given me a second chance to have a family." On the horizon, the sun sank in shades of pink and gold, painting the sky with colors reminiscent of the roses in the garden. A gentle breeze carried the scent of flowers and the promise of many happy days to come. The photo of Sarah in the home's main hall perfectly captured her spirit, young, radiant, full of hope. And now, at last, Robert felt he had honored her memory, not only by protecting her children, but by creating a legacy that would continue helping other families for generations. Emily yawned, tired from another full day. "Bedtime, little one," Robert smiled. "Okay," she agreed, standing up. Then, pausing at the garden door, she turned back with a smile that lit up the world. "Good night, Grandpa. I love you. I love you too, darling. More than all the stars." As the house gradually settled into nighttime stillness, Robert lingered a moment in the garden. One particularly bright star twinkled above, and he smiled, imagining Sarah watching over her family with approval. "Thank you," he whispered into the night, "for giving me this second chance, for trusting me with your most precious treasures. I promise I'll always honor your memory by taking care of them." A gentle breeze stirred the red roses, as though softly waving in acknowledgement. Somewhere, Robert knew, Sarah was smiling. The future stretched out before them, full of promises and possibilities. There would be challenges, of course, but they would face them together as a family, bound not just by blood but by choice, forgiveness, and above all, unconditional love. The lights of the house shone welcomingly in the encroaching night, a beacon of hope and safety. The place Sarah had so desperately sought for her children was now a reality, and though she wasn't physically there to see it, her love and courage lived on in every one of Emily's smiles, every step the twins took, and every precious moment of this new life they had built together. The nightmare was over. A new chapter had begun, and this time it was a story of love, healing, and second chances, just as Sarah had always dreamed for her family.